Welcome everyone to Male Fuzz TV. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Outlander Season 1 Episode 4. It is called The Gathering. So full spoilers for the episode, as always. So we left off last time with Claire being determined to try and leave, and this episode is largely her kind of planning and making her escape attempt. And obviously things don't go exactly as planned. There are
Shocking
things that get in the way. I think, you know, we've the thing we've been the most critical about is probably the narration just feeling a little I don't know, just overdone. Yeah, I think this one is probably the one episode that it's felt the most like needed, in that I think there's other times narration has felt like, oh, I could have just like got an inference from the performance, you know, from a reaction or something. I think here, because so much of it is, this is my plan and this is what I'm watching for and this is what I'm going to do. Like,
we did need it, yeah.
Yeah, we needed it for so that when things went wrong, we understood things were going wrong, or you know what the tension was in the moment as she was doing certain things. That said, though, it does sort of play with you a little bit. The opening of the episode's her, and you think she's running and escaping, and the guards are looking for her because you see like the guard in the watchtower and that, but it turns out she's just playing with the kids and they're just playing tag or something.
She is scoping it out.
Yeah, she is using it. She's being strategic, yeah, for sure. But yeah, so you know, it does play with your expectations a lot. But I think what sticks out to me about this episode is that you don't see Jamie for a long time. Jamie's kind of absent, and it's pointed out that he's absent as well. Like, you know, when she asks about him, someone says, "Oh, you'd best just leave him alone while this gathering thing's going on." And there's a reason for that we get to later.
Mm-hmm.
I think from a narrative purpose, it's a smart choice because it's like the one that she is bonding to, and the one that ultimately is going to be a love interest, even if she's not accepted that yet. I think it's interesting to have him effectively be a non-presence. And then just at the final moment before she would be making the, you know, crossing the line that she wouldn't be able to like bluff her way back from, where she can't like sort of pretend she wasn't doing something, you know, the point of no return. It's right at that moment where she stumbles into Jamie, trips over him, in fact, quite literally.
Yeah.
So I thought that made his entrance into the episode quite effective, having not seen him the rest of the time.
He did, and he still had a couple of pretty hefty scenes that followed on from that.
Yeah.
That you know, that had a fair bit of importance for his character. That, you know, despite, you know, him being absent for probably half the episode, maybe a little bit longer.
Yeah, he's got a few notable scenes afterwards. Obviously, this gathering thing is basically all the men like giving their oath to Colum and pledging their allegiance. And we see Dougal do it first, and it makes sense because he's like the second in command. He's his brother, and all that. And we get kind of the tangled web of why it's complicated with Jamie and why he's hiding. So to sum it up, from what best I can tell here, is that because he is actually related in some way, if he pledges his allegiance, he's actually a proper rival for being the new Laird once Colum dies. And given what Claire's like said to us, like we know that might be relatively imminent. But this is going to create a bit of a power struggle and a bit of a rivalry. And it's not even that. And the sad part is, it doesn't even seem like Jamie would want it. It feels like he's quite happy to just, you know. But by making this oath, he's effectively putting his name in the hat. But if he doesn't make the oath, then he's sort of betraying everyone and they'll just kill him anyway. But Dougal might want to kill him if he tries to, like, sort of take what he sees as his rightful position to take in the near future. So it puts him in this bind, and Claire feels guilty because her stumbling into him, and that gets him found out by the others, because he was intentionally just hiding, because his way to solve this was just to not be found while it was going on, and therefore wasn't making either choice.
It was somehow not a terrible plan. Like, it sounds like it's a bad plan.
It sounds like something you do when you're 12 and you're really nervous about making a choice. You're like, I'm just going to hide, and no one's going to have to ask me anything.
But also because everyone there also knew, hey, if he's just not here, we can pretend he's not here, and no one has to, because no one actually wants to confront this decision either. It's not just Jamie. No one else wants the status quo upset. And either way,
there's a few that do.
All right, there's a couple.
Because they force
the vast majority.
Yeah, they force them into it. Probably because they want him to do it just so they can kill him, I imagine. just to accelerate the whole process. Yeah, because there's the guy in the stable. He's like, you best stay away from him during the gathering, and he clearly knows, and he's clearly saying that to like, no, just leave him be alone, and see him in a couple of days.
The majority of people are quite happy with how things are, and are like, hey, let's just leave it. And it's like Colm and Dougal can also feign ignorance. Oh, he must have gone. He wasn't actually here. Everyone kind of gets what they want.
Which says a lot, actually, that even the two people in charge are quite happy with that idea. And even they seem tense when he's like in the queue coming up to make his pledge. I think this is maybe another statement on the time period and how they're so baked into these traditions and beliefs that literally his way out of it, that is completely reasonable and makes sense, is he just kind of like makes an alternate oath that says, I'm pledging to be loyal and I'm pledging to like follow your word, but I don't actually want to claim any part of this clan. So how's about it? And
it's a little like technicality. Yeah, a little loophole basically. Like we'll take that for now. That'll do.
And Colm, after a moment of tension to sort of make us be on the edge of our seats a little bit, just kind of smiles, as like, he did it. He threaded the needle and pulled it off.
Well played.
And it's funny because like I think from a modern perspective, it doesn't even seem like it's that bold or like ingenious an idea. It's just that clearly in this time period, like there was seen to be two choices, and he's actually being smart and progressive by thinking outside the box. So again, I think it's so much of the show, and this goes for Claire as well, but it's the idea of like sort of like, this is the box you've put yourself in. Now it's about expanding beyond that, and for a lot of the characters in the time period, it's getting progressive ideas from Claire. And when I say progressive, I don't just mean better attitudes towards certain things. I also just mean thinking differently and thinking outside of their time period. And for Claire, obviously, we talked about it a lot in the last episode, how she's kind of like learning things and thinking differently. So, yeah, I didn't enjoy it as much as the last episode. I thought last episode had a more clear, defined thing that I was like into. This I thought was pretty solid. It moved all the character stuff forward.
I think, in an objective sense, this is probably better in some regards in that it's more focused.
Sure,
it's like so specific. It's it's this event and Claire's escape, right?
Yeah,
and that's the thing that it does all episode. There is no other distractions.
There's a couple of scenes that I'm going to point out that I really like, that we've not gotten to yet. I'd probably say my biggest critique of it is that because the episode ends with her going on the road with Dougal, and they're going to, so we're getting to leave the castle, go to different locations, which should be fun. But her final narration, where she's like, "I'm more determined than ever to escape. I have to get back to the rocks," and blah, I was like, this feels almost the exact same speech from the end of the last episode. So if I have one critique, is that her kind of longing to go home is kind of the same thing I get at the end of the episode.
Yeah, and like, I get that's kind of where she is, right, as a character. Like, she really wants to go home. We get it. But it is starting to feel a little bit repetitive when it's just, that's the same point that's raised every time. We can just kind of assume that's her overarching goal at this point, I think, until otherwise said. Yeah,
it's not a big deal. It sort of, I felt it just right, just in that last like 30 seconds as she was saying the words again. It was like, okay, you kind of said this last episode. Yeah. I get it. You want to go home. But and there was a little, I think when she was going to get the horse, she was asking the stable guy about the horse. He describes the horse as, oh, you need to be careful and watch her though, because if the first chance she gets, she'll turn back home. Obviously a little on the nose, but kind of describes Claire at this moment as well. Now, one of the things we talked about last episode that kind of, I wasn't expecting it to come up as much as this immediately in the next episode, but it was Dougal possibly being a little won over by Claire in some way. He, throughout this episode, so there's a few events that happen. When Claire's trying to make her escape, she runs into a couple of drunk guys and they get threatening. They try to start attacking her, and Dougal kind of stumbles into it and fights them off. And it's like, okay, so you're playing with this idea that we still kind of respect him more, but he is drunk and he still kind of makes a move himself.
Yeah,
and she slaps him, and there's a decent moment of tension.
Then knocks him out with a chair.
Yeah, but before that, there's a decent moment of tension where her sack of food that she's taking with her to, survive on the road for a couple of days, and it's like, oh, is he going to see that? Is he going to find it? Is she going to be in trouble? But so you've got that, and you've the gathering plays out, but it's the next day on the hunt, where all the a lot of the men get together with their muskets or whatever and go looking for a boar, and Claire even kind of jokes about how it's a bit silly that they're putting all this effort into, like, you know, this type of animal.
She's like, oh, it's just a pig. And I think that's probably it's a relatively common modern attitude to just be like,
Probably,
it's
yeah.
a pig. But hey, no, those things were dangerous. I mean, they still are, but just in, the context.
Yeah, we get clear first account of that as we go on. We get like one minor injury, and then there's another guy who gets properly impaled, and it's like this great moment because Dougal's holding him and Claire's like checking him out, and the leg's like, okay, that's not good, but you won't lose your leg, and then she lifts up his top
Stomach one, yeah.
and sees the stomach, and you can see his intestines hanging out, and it's like, oh yeah, like I don't fancy your chances.
And Dougal, like, because she'd started to tie off the leg to stop the bleeding, and Dougal just unties it. It's like, might as well let him go quicker, because that stomach one's going to take days, and it's going to be awful and painful, whereas he'll just bleed out relatively quickly from the leg as well.
Yeah, no, it's like a moment of mercy, and I like that it shows that he trusts her word, because it's just one glance from her saying no, he's not making it. He makes this choice based on that, and then she earns a lot of his respect by helping this guy go peacefully, by asking him about a nice memory that puts him at peace as he's dying.
Ask him about his home.
Yeah, and it's kind of a sweet moment, and there's a couple of several moments during the scene where Dougal looks at her and sort of like, it's like he's vulnerable in a moment, because so much with her he's been very like on guard and very the stern man in charge, and this is kind of a moment where he doesn't have the strength to do that. He's too busy being concerned and looking after this guy as he's dying. And it leads to when they come back, and it's after this sad scene, the two big Dougal scenes. I think Dougal scenes are the ones in this episode that are by and large the best. The two after this that really stick out is when they get back to the castle. I'll call it hockey. I'm sure someone will correct me in the comments and tell me it's got a different name, but
it was like half hockey, half hurling.
Yeah. But they're very rough, right? And Jamie's playing, and Dougal jumps in and gets rough with them, but it's kind of like a friendly, rough, like Big Brother kind of roughhousing kind of thing. Well, at least by this time period standards.
Yeah,
I think today a lot of what he does would be assault. But
no one was calling him out on it, and not because of a we're not calling him out because he's above us. I didn't know this is well within the limits of the game.
Yeah, and Jamie's still into it. He's not feeling threatened by him. He's fighting back the way he can. But it's kind of like, okay, after the tension of that previous night, this is him finally kind of like reaching out again, and in Dougal's own way to sort of like make just to sort of say, hey, we're okay, like we're in a good place. So I thought that was effective, and when it was done, it was also relieving tension after what just happened as well. This was him sort of like getting out of his system. But the final big scene is when he goes to Claire and wants to thank her, and obviously he's still a little standoffish in some ways, but it's very notable some of the ways that he talks to her in this scene, where he's a little bit more, he uses phrases and says certain things that do come across as a bit more friendly, even though he's still very much, you're coming with me on the road. And you could read this other ways if you wanted to, but there's a few key words and phrases that he uses that tell me that it says, no, he kind of respects her now. It's specifically when he says, read a healer, especially one that can cope under strain, and there tends to be a lot of that in the road. That was like, that is the one like little part of the entire speech that told me what you think of her.
Yeah, this is not a punishment, because you could read it as a punishment of
or not trusting her.
You tried to escape. Yeah, like, I don't trust you here. If we're gone, you might get away. Whereas I can keep a closer eye on you out there. You could read it as that, but it doesn't play like that. I don't think. I say it is like, because he asks her, "Oh yeah, you've seen men die from violence before. Like you handled that well. Like it's a respect. It's a, hey, you'll be good on the road. Not a case of, oh, I'll just keep an eye on you."
Yeah, you didn't panic. You knew what to do in the moment. All that kind of thing. I think it's really effective. Just even little things like he cracks a little. Not a joke per se, but he says, Mrs. Fitz would have a portrait of you done if it was up to her, kind of thing. Yeah. He's kind of acknowledging what other people that he's kind of also, making it clear that they're lower than him in the food chain, but he's acknowledging that he's hearing good things about her from other people. There's just a few little things that feel like, oh, his opinion of her is changing, and he's starting to trust her in some way, which, might actually make us feel bad if she does have to betray him to try and get home at one point. It'll be more conflicting because it's like, oh, we actually kind of respect Dougal's opinion of her now.
Yeah, he's clearly not a perfect person. He definitely has a lot of flaws. We even see some of them in this episode. But he still tends to mostly kind of fall on that bright side of the line, especially for the time period. Where, he does seem to be, relatively speaking, one of the good guys.
Well, which actually is kind of interesting about the episode is you have him drunkenly kind of like coming on to her, and then you have the scene where like, oh, he may have to kill Jamie because he doesn't want his position threatened. So you get a couple of scenes quite close together that are like, oh, maybe Dougal's a bit worse than what we thought. But then the rest of the episode kind of shows you that, oh no, there's just more layers to him than that. It's not quite as black and white as perhaps it, was kind of setting you up for at a certain point. So, I think that's the strong part of this episode in the way of character development. Dougal we get a lot more exploration of, and obviously you get a bit more Jamie, you get a bit more Claire, because you're always going to with them. But some fun little things I think throughout the episode. One thing that really got my mind going actually. So part of her plan is to make sure a lot of the guards, specifically the ones that are following her, are going to be a bit maybe too inebriated to do anything while she's trying to escape. So she actually is using a sedative, and the reason why I'm specifically using that word is because, she just hands him the bottle, right? The goofy one, Angus, has been like following her, and is like, early in the episode he's like, oh, and he's trying to get off with the lassie who's eyeing him up and things like that, which is all fairly amusing in its own way. But she just outright says, oh, this is quite strong, and she's like, oh, it's a sedative. And obviously she's saying that out loud because she doesn't know what that word means. In fact, he even says, is that Spanish? Like, he doesn't know. And it's a funny enough scene, and the way she's got a grin on her face after she says it is enjoyable for us, the audience. So it's kind of like, we know what she's doing. This is funny. It got my mind thinking though, that what if at some point she says a word like that, and someone probably knows what she means?
I think it's going to happen at some point.
And that's immediately what I thought when she did this. I was like, oh, has anyone else come back?
Maybe even not that, but more when she goes on her travels. Some maybe more educated people that she runs into without perhaps realizing.
Yeah.
I did also find it funny. We talked last episode about her learning, about the herbs and stuff in this time. Obviously, she's got, I think it was valerian root. She knows that it's used for a sedative. It's in like even now a lot like sleeping tablets that you can buy just over the counter are that, which is presumably why she knows things like this. But again, she doesn't know the dosage. She doesn't know the correct way of preparing it. She knows these things because we've, in modern science, we've kind of just turned that into a tablet. It's been, it's done for us. But she doesn't quite understand, okay, this is the best way to prepare it. This is the best way to dose it. And she's still having to learn those things from the locals.
Yeah, Galus pops her around and ends up giving her some advice. And her scene's a little bit interesting actually, because there's a few things here. One is that she kind of suspects that she's going to try and run away, and kind of warns her that the Highlands are quite dangerous for a woman to be on her own. May want to rethink that. But also thinks she may be pregnant because she's got a lot of food, and we know it's because she's just stashing food to run away with. But it does get to the question of like her trying to have a child with her husband and not being able to, and that kind of seeping. Like it's Claire's just on guard, but then that real kind of like little bit of sadness comes through when she has to kind of sort of bring that up.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of that there. Yeah, and the reason why she doesn't escape, of course, is that Jamie, when she runs into him, points out that Colum's not an idiot. He knows that a lot of the main men are all going to be drunk at the party, so he's actually got a lot of guards, like more than usual, sprinkled throughout the woods and the surrounding areas. So maybe not wise to make a run for it.
Let's not let the rivals think it'll be a nice, easy night.
Yeah. So, which makes sense, and it's the sort of thing where her logic was sound, but at the same time, yeah, like it's also smart for them to be aware that people might think this is a weeknight for them and attack. So, she doesn't look stupid for not considering it.
No,
I don't think.
No, but once it's pointed out, it's kind of like, yeah, maybe we should have thought of that at the same time.
Yeah. But like her logic was sound enough.
It was, yeah.
Yeah. Also, the young woman who likes Jamie wants to get a love potion.
Yeah, and at first Claire's like, "What the hell are you asking me for?" And then she's like, "Sure, here's some horse shit.
Here's some horse shit. Put that outside his door. Stamp your feet and say there's no place like love 3 times."
Yeah.
Which we're not going to get a lot of movie references from Claire, but Wizard of Oz is like one of the few movies she can reference, so why not?
Pretty comfortably, yeah.
Oddly, it made me think of Avengers. You know, when they make the Wizard of Oz reference, and Captain America's like, "I got that reference," because that's like the one movie that's in pop culture that came out before he got frozen in time.
yeah, that's true.
So, yeah. So that was a fun little bit, and yeah, I think I wasn't as excited by the episode because I think the ideas of Claire coming up against, you know, Father Bane and all of that stuff was very exciting and very to my taste. This episode, I think, does some solid character work, particularly in the last third. Once you get to the hunt and everything that kind of falls from that, I think is really strong.
I think obviously you mentioned Father Bane there. I think it's interesting to see that we're going to actually be taking it out of the castle, out of the village. So we're presumably not going to encounter Father Bane for a few episodes at least.
I'd imagine so.
By the time they come back round to the castle, how much damage has he done to her reputation in the village?
And even if he's not actively done anything to her, just, you know, they're gone for several days whilst it's happening. What could have changed when she gets back? Like, what event might have happened that's put everyone on edge? Is the castle being attacked maybe while they're away or something?
Or just to point out the obvious, maybe Colum's death.
Oh yeah, that could be waiting for them when they get back. Also, just the idea they're going around to these different little towns and wherever they're going, I do have to wonder, like, how safe, like, are we going to then look back at the castle and go, yo, that castle feels pretty safe in hindsight because, like, all these locations out in the wild, as it were.
I suspect maybe some encounters with the English maybe coming up as well.
Yeah. The evil English, let's not forget them.
Yeah, those terrible bastards.
Yep. And I'm not speaking about the show in general, I'm just, in general, the evil English.
Yeah, I mean, we take pride in it.
Ah, yes.
We're good at it.
Still not about a red coat, I see.
I literally haven't been out in like 3 weeks because I'm working 6 days a week. So on my one day off, I sleep.
People are excited about this. People are referring to you as Red Coat Connor in my live streams.
That's good. They should. I'm wearing like purple. That's reddish.
Reddish.
I'll get one. Maybe next week. I don't know. I don't actually know when I have a day off next yet.
See, this is the problem with the ginger gene infecting English people, is that ginger plus red coat is just too much of one strong, vibrant color to take.
Yeah. The world might end.
Dear. I'm sure someone will point out that there were still ginger people in England in this time period, but
I'm almost certain there were. There has been migration for a long time before.
But it didn't work for my joke, so shut up.
I was going to let your joke just leave it there. I was not going to point out the factual errors of history.
Yes. So no. I'm curious about the next episode. We'll see what On the Road is like. Yeah. So, but there you go. That is episode 4 of the Outlander. I always said the gallery of Outlander. So let us know what you thought of this one in the comments below. Like, subscribe, ding the bell for notifications, all that stuff. You can get us on the Twitters at mail_fuzz for channel updates, and of course you can support all the content and keep everything coming by going over to patreon.com/mailfuzztv and supporting us over there on a monthly basis, or by hitting the super thanks button below the video on YouTube. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching Outlander. And the power of Christ will compel you. Father Bane will come after you. Yes.